The Last Call at 2:17 a.m. Part 2. It should have ended there, with the suspect in custody and the victim rushed to the hospital. Another violent dispute explained and filed away like so many others. But Officer Daniel Reyes couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up. Because criminals who plan distractions don't usually wait calmly to be caught unless there's something bigger at play. And as the interrogation began, the suspect remained unusually relaxed, almost amused, answering questions with just enough detail to sound cooperative while carefully avoiding anything meaningful, insisting it was a simple argument gone wrong, money, anger, bad decisions, nothing more. Yet his earlier words echoed in Daniel's mind, "You're too late anyway." And those words didn't belong to a man who had already lost. They sounded like someone who knew something the police didn't. And hours later, that feeling turned into something real when a call came in from the hospital. The victim had regained consciousness but was in critical condition, barely able to speak. And when detectives leaned in to hear him, he whispered something that immediately changed everything. There were two. And then he slipped back into unconsciousness, and suddenly the entire case fractured, because there was only one suspect in custody, one man who had been found in the house, one story that now no longer made sense. And Daniel rushed back to the crime scene with a new team, the house already taped off, but now feeling different, heavier, as if it had been holding on to a secret they had missed the first time. And they searched again, more carefully this time, every corner, every shadow, until Daniel returned to the kitchen where the phone had been, replaying the voicemail in his head, the breathing, the whisper, "He's still inside." And that's when it hit him. The wording wasn't someone, it was he, specific, deliberate, like the caller knew exactly who they were talking about. And Daniel's eyes moved slowly around the room until they landed on something that had seemed insignificant before. A second phone charger plugged into the wall near the counter, one that hadn't been connected to the phone they found. And his pulse quickened as the realization set in that someone else had been there long enough to leave behind traces, and maybe long enough to leave without being seen. And then another officer called out from upstairs. Something had been found inside the attic, a small hidden space barely noticeable behind a loose panel. And when Daniel climbed up and looked inside, he felt the air leave his lungs, because the space wasn't empty. It showed signs of someone living there, blankets, food wrappers, a flashlight, and most disturbing of all, a second phone, powered off. And when forensics later examined it, they uncovered dozens of recordings, audio files dating back weeks, maybe months, recordings of conversations inside the house, arguments, business discussions, private moments that were never meant to be heard. And it became clear that someone had been watching, listening, living above them without their knowledge. And when they finally powered the phone on, they discovered the last outgoing call had been made at exactly 2:17 a.m. to 911, meaning the call that brought police to the house didn't come from the suspect at all, but from whoever had been hiding in the attic, someone who had witnessed everything and chose that exact moment to act. And suddenly the suspect's strange confidence made sense, because he hadn't been waiting for the police. He had been waiting for that call, expecting it, counting on it. And when confronted with this new evidence, his expression finally changed for the first time, the smile fading slightly as he leaned back and said quietly, "So you found him." And Daniel felt a chill run through him as he asked the question that now mattered more than anything. Found who? And the suspect's eyes met his with something close to satisfaction as he replied, "The one who's been living in your shadows." And the room fell silent again, because the truth was no longer about a business dispute or a single violent act. It was something far more disturbing. Someone had been inside that house long before the crime, watching, waiting, recording. And when the moment came, they didn't just call for help, they set everything in motion. And the most terrifying part wasn't what they had done, but the fact that they were now gone, leaving behind only questions, recordings, and the chilling realization that the real mastermind of the night at 2:17 a.m. was never the man in handcuffs, but the one who disappeared without a trace. And as Officer Daniel Reyes stepped out of the station into the cold early morning light, he understood something that would stay with him forever. Some crimes aren't just committed, they're orchestrated from the shadows, and sometimes the person who calls 911 isn't the victim or even the suspect, but the one controlling the entire story from beginning to end.
The city tried to move on after the revelations of the hidden watcher in the attic. The suspect remained in custody. The victim fought for his life in a hospital bed, and the case that once seemed simple had turned into something layered and deeply unsettling. But for Officer Daniel Reyes, it was far from over, because the recordings recovered from the second phone refused to leave his mind. Hours upon hours of carefully captured conversations, not random, not chaotic, but intentional, organized, as if someone had been building a narrative piece by piece. And as Daniel sat alone in the evidence room late one night, listening again, he noticed something he hadn't before, a pattern hidden beneath the voices, faint sounds in the background that repeated across multiple recordings, a soft clicking noise, steady, rhythmic, almost mechanical, and it appeared in different rooms at different times, too consistent to be coincidence. And that's when he requested a full forensic audio enhancement, pushing the lab to isolate every background frequency. And what came back changed everything, because the clicking wasn't part of the house. It was coming from the recording device itself, a subtle defect, like a signature, something unique to a specific model of phone. And when they traced that model through purchase records and local retailers, the list narrowed quickly until only one recent buyer matched the timeline, a name that made Daniel's chest tighten when he saw it, because it wasn't a stranger. It wasn't someone connected to the victim or the suspect. It was someone much closer to the investigation, someone who had access to details, to timing, to police response patterns. And as the realization settled in, Daniel felt the ground shift beneath everything he thought he understood, because the name on that purchase record belonged to a civilian consultant who occasionally worked with the department on technical cases, a quiet, overlooked figure who had been present earlier in the investigation, observing, listening, saying very little, someone no one would suspect. And when Daniel brought this to his superior, the room filled with tension, disbelief at first, then silence, because it fit too well to ignore, and a quiet internal operation was launched. No alerts, no public moves, just careful observation. And what they found only confirmed the nightmare. The consultant had no clear history before a few years ago, records that felt constructed, identities that almost but didn't quite align, like someone who had rewritten themselves. And when they traced further back, they uncovered fragments of similar cases in other states, unsolved incidents involving surveillance, manipulation, crimes that felt staged, controlled, always ending with confusion and missing pieces. And at the center of each one, just barely visible, was a presence matching the same pattern, the same kind of observer. And suddenly, the truth became unavoidable. This wasn't random. This wasn't personal. This was methodical. A person who didn't just commit crimes, but engineered them, studied human behavior, created pressure, and then watched as people broke under it, recording everything like a twisted experiment. And the house on Maple Street had simply been the latest stage. The suspect and victim, nothing more than pieces placed into conflict. And the 2:17 a.m. call wasn't about escape or panic. It was timing, the perfect moment to bring in law enforcement and complete the scenario. And when Daniel finally confronted the consultant in a controlled setting, the man didn't run, didn't resist. He simply smiled in that same calm, knowing way that now felt horrifyingly familiar, and said, "You finally heard it, didn't you?" And Daniel demanded answers, demanded to know why, but the man only tilted his head slightly and replied, People reveal who they really are when they think no one is watching. I just make sure they're seen. And in that moment, everything clicked into place. The recordings, the manipulation, the patience. This wasn't about money or revenge. It was about control, about observing human nature pushed to its limits. And before he was taken into custody, the man added one final sentence that would haunt Daniel long after the case was closed. This wasn't the only house. And just like that, the story that began with a single call at 2:17 a.m. expanded into something far darker, a network of unseen moments, hidden observers, and crimes that may never fully be uncovered. And as the sun rose over the quiet streets of Maple Street once again, returning it to the illusion of normal life, Officer Daniel Reyes understood a truth that would never leave him, that the most dangerous people aren't always the ones who act in the open, but the ones who stand in the shadows, watching, learning, and waiting for the perfect moment to turn ordinary lives into something far more terrifying. Because sometimes the real crime isn't what happens in front of you, but what's been happening the entire time without you ever knowing.